You're welcome to our consciousness study class. This is our usual philosophical class where we do study the philosophy and ideology by Kwame Nkrumah. So yes, we will continue from where we left last time. And yes, Brother Carrington, please, if you are able, do for us the reading, then we can share our thinking.
Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another session of the Consciousism Study Group. We are going to read the next two paragraphs. In the philosophy of Berkeley, empiricism appears to be endorsed, but is in fact, strictly speaking, denied. For however glibly Berkeley said that material objects were agglomerations of ideas of sense, he told us that it was really God who put the ideas in our mind. Sense was completely otiose in the philosophy of Berkeley. This was necessarily so because for him, our bodies were carried in our mind. The stage could not therefore be set for sensation. So impressive were the insinuations of this Berkeleyan doublespeak that the grateful church rewarded him with a bishopric. The power of the church could still be felt, and philosophers like Descartes and Leibniz, inspired by fear of being recognized immediately as undermining the social power of the church in favor of humanism, prudently suppressed their definitive works, which only saw the light of day posthumously. I have said that humanism branched off into a democratic capitalism and a cooperative socialism. The two philosophies of Leibniz and Descartes provide further illustration of the way this happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Carrington. Yeah, can you be able to help us illustrate some of the few words here? There's a word here called, in the first paragraph, there was a word there that was used.
Glibly, and then there's another one I'm interested in, otios.
Yeah, otios.
It sounds like Luo.
Let's try to see if we can get their meaning first.
Yes.
Before we proceed. Meanwhile, welcome Brother Joseph, Brother Coco, Elder Sam. Please most welcome. Carrington has read for us the paragraph. I'll reread it as Brother Carrington. Try to look for the meaning of those words so that once I'm done, we can be able to share the meaning. So this is a continuation of the previous chapter, a paragraph, where we ended by the word that the church ran with the hare and hunted with the hounds. Now this, they are introducing us to Berkeley. So the reading is, in the philosophy of Berkeley, empiricism appears to be endorsed, but it is in fact, strictly speaking, denied. For however, globally, Berkeley said that material objects were agglomeration of ideas of sense. He told us that it was really God who put the ideas in our mind. Sense was completely otious in the philosophy of Berkeley. This was necessarily so because for him, our bodies were carried in our mind. The stage could not therefore be set for sensation. So impressive were the insinuations of his Berkeleyan doublespeak that the grateful church rewarded him with a bishopric. The power of the church could still be felt, and philosophers like Descartes and Leibniz, inspired by fear of being recognized immediately as undermining the social power of the church in favor of humanism, prudently suppressed their definitive work, which only saw the light of the day posthumously. I have already said that humanism branched off into a democratic capitalism and cooperative socialism. The two philosophies of Leibniz and Descartes provide further illustration of the way in which this happened. So that's our reading for today. Brother Carrington, have you been able to find the meanings of the words?
I have shared it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, both of them. Yeah.
Let me look at the chat. So, can you just explain them anyway? Gallibly means in a way that is confident but simple. In a way that is confident but simple. Okay. Then the next one is on odious, serving no practical purpose or result.
Yeah. Useless, I think.
Yes. Or is useless.
Yeah, yeah.
So sense of useless in the philosophy of Berkeley. Okay, now let's connect to that then. Okay.
Could I suggest that also that the word empiricism is also highlighted so that there will be no confusion in people's minds?
Okay, Carrington, can you explain empiricism? I know that one you can.
Empiricism is the basis of modern science or science in any society. The idea that any propositions, any statements about the physical world or society should be tested against reality. That is, physical reality is the judge of anything we can say about the universe or society, for that matter.
We call it empirical evidence.
Yes, exactly. Empirical evidence is evidence that is gotten from.
Yeah, so it's more of like scientific. People will say scientific basically. So empiricism is more of scientific that can be proven. Some data can be backed up for that.
Yes.
So this is what you're reading. Of course, some of us might have come across, before I start opening the floor, some of us might have come across Berkeley sometimes back. That was in chapter 1 when we were dealing with philosophy and philosophy in retrospect. And Berkeley is actually idealist. He believed in the existence of spirits and ideas. While there was somebody who was called Thales. I've shared the book of Berkeley in our library. Have you people check it? Today. Just today I've shared 2 books about Berkeley in our library. His works and other things, even Berkeley Bishopry, has actually been shared in our library today. So I've shared the works of Berkeley, together with the works of, what do we call it, Thales. Descartes also have shared the writings of Descartes today, and Leibniz is what I'll be sharing tomorrow. So from Berkeley, he believes that he takes the idealist position that everything is about spirits and ideas. And we talk of spirits and ideas, then sometimes back I think Brother Kwame was asking a simple question. Those who are spiritualists or idealists do not properly believe in the existence of material or matter. So like you see what Berkeley is saying somewhere here, that sense was completely useless. And that to him, our body, our physical appearance is mental. Like, it's mind-based. Like, everything to them is the mind. So it's a perception. In fact, it's a perception and a perception. To an extent that they don't believe in the material being and existence. While we take the position that as much as we believe on spirits, we believe that matter is primary. For example, to our standing is that there cannot be a mind without the body. Because the body and part of the body called the brain can do the minding. But Berkeley's standing is like, yes, there can be mind without the body. That's basically the type of idealism or idealistic thinking they were. And this is what then brings the aspect of individualism. Because they think about only themselves and their mind. In fact, if you talk about poverty exists or anything that they cannot see, they don't believe exists. To them, what exists is their mind. So basically, that's where we came with Berkeley, and his proponent was actually Thales in that particular moment. But Brother Carrington, allow me to ask you to start first because you've read this as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
And before you start, of course, I've received confirmation that Brother Coco is not able to speak, but is with us. Same with the things are wind up. And welcome, Sister Ida. Thank you for joining us as well. And yeah. And Sister Mara is also here with us. So Sister Mara, Sister Ida, welcome. Yeah, let's start sharing our thinking, starting with Brother Carrington on the paragraph highlighted in our screen, please. Carrington, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Brother Pigeon. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. So the things that I've picked up from these paragraphs, first, just to note that we have now almost completely drifted from the Greek philosophers, the ancient Greek philosophers, through the Roman and Christian philosophers. We are now in the Renaissance people, the Renaissance philosophers of Western Europe. And we are looking at basically the process of the birth of modern political systems through philosophy, right? A recurring theme again is the idea that philosophy influences ideologies, which influences worldviews, and these worldviews influence policy, right? Out of a racist philosophy that whites are superior to blacks, or vice versa, blacks are superior to whites, there will come a very, very different political ideology, respectively. So it is important for this reason to look at philosophy and these Renaissance philosophers. So Berkeley is very famous for utilitarianism and other ideas, but here we are talking about what we can call his metaphysics, his philosophy about how the universe actually looks like to him. So to him, ideas as data, sense data is important, okay? But he argues that this sense data is data that we can gain physically, i.e. empiricism, but he argues that this sense data, one, is mediated by God, okay? And second, that it is mediated in the mind. So we have a situation where Berkeley accepts that practically you're going to need to go and check out whether the seat is firm enough for you to sit on it. But nonetheless, all these things are occurring inside your mind, and they are mediated and caused by God. Okay? And this is the role of God in Berkeley's philosophy, basically as a creator and mediator of reality. And therefore, the church, of course, finds this comforting, right? Because God has a central role to play in the creation and mediation of the universe. This is basically the Bible from start to finish. Berkeley is thus rewarded. I didn't know this. He's made a bishop by the church because of his philosophy and his activities. So we can see that in the early Renaissance, way before the Industrial Revolution, the church still has a very, very strong grip on Western European societies, right? It is the institution alongside the monarchy and aristocracy, which is a center of power in European societies. So philosophers, therefore, employing their common sense, have to dance lightly. But also, it's not a matter of just dancing lightly. It is that since the church decides what questions can and can't be asked, and the ways these questions will be answered, the way the philosophers themselves use language and think is determined by this structure that has been created by the church over a period of, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500 years. Okay. Now we are entering two principal philosophers, Leibniz and Descartes. Descartes from France, Leibniz from Germany, if I'm not wrong. Descartes is famous for this idea of, I think, therefore I am. And as Brother Pigeon has mentioned, a lot of this, what you can call existential or mental philosophies which argue for the centrality of the mind in interpreting and mediating reality, lean idealist, but also have empirical or empiricist persuasions. And Descartes is one of them. As some of you might know, he's famous also for the Cartesian coordinate system. He was a mathematician. He was a bit of a scientist. So again, he realizes the importance of empiricism, just like Berkeley, but argues that reality fundamentally is mediated by the mind, and he can push it to being mediated by the mind of God. I am less familiar with Leibniz philosophy. I guess this is what we will explore in the next paragraph, but he was also a famous mathematician. And those of you who hate mathematics can partially blame him for calculus. But this overriding theme of the church still subtly influencing idealist philosophy, still trying to support idealist philosophy, should come through very clearly, right? Making philosophers bishops, etc., members of the aristocracy and thinkers. It should come out very clearly that the church is still a central player in political philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Carrington. Before you leave, I'd like to do a follow-up. I'm sharing the book of Berkeley and the work of Berkeley in the chat. And please, members, feel free to look at the chat. I've said in our Pan-African library, CSG library, today I was uploading the works of Berkeley in sharing Berkeley. I've also shared the Descartes. I've shared Thales. I've shared the work of Anaximander, the same work of Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates. Tomorrow we'll be sharing the works of Leibniz and other philosophers that are here. I'll be looking for the books and share with you. I wanted to do a follow-up with you, but Sisaida has hand this up. Sisaida, please go first.
Please, I wanted to ask Brother Carrington if he knew, or maybe we've read it and it's slipped my mind. Was Berkeley a priest before they made him a bishop? That's really what I wanted to ask. Or did they just make him a bishop? Does anybody know?
I don't. Does anybody know? Let me check.
I'm equally not sure, but maybe I know. His philosophy was tending to be as idealist. Of course, he was he's called was a theologian, I think so. But I've uploaded the book. Probably you might have to read and know whether he was one of them. But he was categorized as idealist, as per our understanding.
Thank you.
So, Carrington, I wanted to engage on some few aspects. In the first paragraph, when Berkeley says that material objects were agglomerations of ideas of sense, what do you take with that? Can you explain that further? What is trying to mean with that?
Yes. So Berkeley accepts that there is something called reality, and it gets to your mind somehow. But the idea is that your mind plays an important role in interpreting these objects, right? And all your mind has to operate with is ideas. It cannot, your mind cannot touch a piece of paper. It cannot touch a pen. But what happens, let's use something that has more diverse senses. Let's use meat, for example. So you chew meat, it is tasty, cooked in very good, a goosey soup, very tasty, smells nice. You can hear the sound of yourself chewing the meat. So all your mind interacts with, it doesn't interact with the meat, it interacts with the smell, the taste, the sound, and the soup, the taste of the soup, etc., and the temperature, let's say, of the soup. So that's all your mind receives. And Berkeley is saying that the collection, agglomeration is just the collection of all these senses is what is called meat, essentially. And therefore, this is the basis of his version of idealism, but idealism supported with empiricism.
Thank you, Carrington. Just on the same example you've used, in a context of a meat is an object. Its taste, whether it is sweet or sour or whatever, it still also will believe to us, it still matter, but in a different state. Now, in this case, Berkeley is trying to refer to the meat at a physical or physical material object as just an idea, which means it's not actually a physical or what we call concrete thing. To him, probably, he says matter or material objects is an idea, which is the ideal sense of it. Does that what actually is trying to imply here, according to your thinking?
Yes, solipsism. Solipsism now applied to all of reality, in a sense. That is how I understand it here.
Okay. The next aspect I wanted to ask in the same paragraph, you're thinking a bit before I go to the next speaker, is when he says that he told us that it was really God who put the ideas in our mind. I know Sister Myra is here. I think she is here. I've been looking at the psychological development of Black Child. I've shared that book with Sam, of course. This idea, and I did psychology a bit as a teacher, and we do basically the psychology of the child, the Freud's and whatever psychologists, Freud psychology. Now, do you believe that, and this is a question that I've been asked, when he says that a child come in without ideas, tabula rasa, psychology says the mind is tabula rasa, the mind is empty. So the experiences and everything else from the child birth, then that forms what gets to the mind of the child. But here, is Berkeley trying to mean that already the child is being born with ideas already, and God has put them in his mind or her mind? Is that what basically what he's trying to describe here?
Now, I don't know enough of Berkeley's philosophy to understand what he thinks about the development of the mind, but somebody who knows better can jump in. But my suspicion is that the point he's trying to make is that even if the child is born without some ideas, their mind is going to essentially construct these things from scratch if possible, and therefore we should pay attention to how the mind does these things. And his argument is that, of course, God is a mediator here.
Okay, thank you. Because there were strong idealists who believe that, you see the sentence that follow that, he says that this was necessarily because for him our bodies were carried in our mind. What does that statement mean? Our body being carried in our mind. according to your thinking, Carrington?
Just like that piece of meat is carried in our mind, our sensation of our bodies, right? The idea that I can pinch myself and feel pain. That pain is something processed in my mind. The fact that I can feel my hand, it is something processed in my mind. So everything that I can say, everything useful that I can say about my body is stored in my mind. So it is
Which means even your body is in your mind, which means
Yeah.
to you, I'm saying that you have a body, you have a leg, you have a feet, you have a stomach. It's just ideas in mind. It's not, to him, it's not anything. It's just ideas in your mind.
It's a collection of senses. The body is a collection of senses, an agglomeration, yes.
Okay. I might want to engage you further on that. But okay, now in this second paragraph, there's one thing I also wanted to engage your thinking as well. I know you've shared your thinking as well, but one, in where they says that the first paragraph, that the power of the church could still be felt, that's not my big interest. And the philosopher like Descartes and Leibniz, inspired by fear of being recognized immediately as undermining the social power of church in favor of humanism, prudently suppress their definitive works which only saw the light of the day. I'm not interested in that. But here is that when they say that, I have already said that humanism branched off into democratic capitalism and cooperative socialism. What to you is, Brother Carrington, what can be this democratic capitalism as corporate socialism? To your own thinking, what do you understand that?
So I think the Osajefo is just talking about East and West, right? Communism and capitalism. It is talking about that separation, and he's trying to trace this separation of communism and capitalism, or socialism and capitalism, from this period of philosophy. Again, this idea of philosophy feeding into politics. Yeah.
You've just reminded me that sometimes you actually learn that, of course, humanism, which is also basically based on an individual, a human being, we realized sometimes back it was said that individualism can still lead to capitalism or socialism.
Both, yes.
It can lead to both. So probably in this aspect of humanism branching, it can still lead to what you call democratic capitalism, or it can lead to what you call cooperative socialism.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
On the philosophical system at hand, yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing your thinking with us, Brother Carrington. Brother Coco? No, Brother Coco is still traveling. Okay. Sister Myra, are you able to share your thinking with us?
Brother Pigeon, I'm just catching up, so I'll pass. I'll first listen.
Okay. Elder Sam?
Bro, good evening, everybody. Brother Pigeon, you know, I've been absent for some time, but when I read these passages this afternoon, the first thing that came to my mind is, I'm not sure if people are aware of some video clips that are in the social media about what they call McAngel comedy. If people are aware of this, there's one that talks of McAngel and the little sister and the professor. And the professor argues with them about the existence of God and him being the professor. But if you go into that joke, the little girl ultimately finds him because the professor says everything that you cannot see and touch does not exist. So God does not exist because you can't touch him. But the little girl says, then how do you know about this? The professor says, I use my common sense. And then the little girl says, where's your common sense? Can you see it? Can you touch it? And the professor says, no. So there's no common sense. It does not exist. So you see, sometimes in philosophy, there's things that we think we understand. And sometimes there's mistaken ideas that falls into the cracks in terms of philosophy. That was the first impression I got from this passage. But the other matter that comes through for me here is actually the fact that the Osajef or Kwame Nkrumah is giving us almost perspectives from different angles, trying to express the essence of understanding exactly whatever you are dealing with, showing that in between times there will be philosophies, there will be concepts that are being brought into the fore that can twist and turn people. And like I said, a little girl said to the professor, if you cannot touch your common sense or see it, then it does not exist. And the professor was baffled by a little girl. So in the same situation, in the revolution, we are faced with all these daily. And that is why we need to read and understand all these concepts and be able to, and you see at times, other people lie low, like these two guys, the Carters and Libis, who lay low with whatever theory they had, because they didn't want to be seen to be upsetting the apple cart. And this is exactly what happens even with us in the revolution. And you know, if I bring this currently to our situation in South Africa, we are almost in dire straits with theories that all are coming short to the actual revolution. The more we change course, the more we bring in new things, everything does not serve the people. Right now, as we speak, the GNU government does not agree about the budget of the country. And this is where people need to see clearly between what is correct, what is wrong. And that is why that the two, if I conclude now, that says democratic capitalism. You know, when you use that phrase, people think you are talking something that is genuine. But the essence of that is a free market that is individualistic, personalized capitalism, which is not nearer to any democracy that we are thinking about. And therefore, we must be, and remember when we talked about humanism the other time, they said, as long as it serves the individual, then that is not what we are looking for. Everything that we do must be for the good of all of humanity. Thanks.
Oh, you bring a very interesting aspect. I didn't see that. You're trying to point out the fear that actually inspired the Kurds and Lebanese not to challenge the social order of the church. A very interesting perspective indeed. And yeah, but we had come across that in the past paragraph, where the church actually also embraced humanism in one or the other. I think for their survival. And that's why we were told that they were actually, they ran with the hare and they still hunted with the hound. So in one way, they knew that the philosophical angle was moving towards humanism. They never wanted to miss out of that. So they went to humanism, at the same time they still have their God as the center of everything else. And I think that's a practical situation in the country today, where, yes, churches are coming out to point out to the government issues. They're trying to, sometimes like in Kenya here, they're calling out government against abductions, killing. But at that time, they're still also back to the God and trying to pray for the country. They still go back to pray for the president to change. Is it, at you, Elder Sam, is it the right position that the church should take? Of course, they cannot, they're thinking God is still the order of everything else, but they also don't want to be relevant in the conversation about human aspect and human welfare. Do you think that middle position that the church is taking is something that should be taken, or what do you think about it?
Well, I think practically we see that it will never, remember now, the church will always want to be seen to be a middle road, always trying to come. Their purpose is basically, their philosophy is basically, they survive on capitalism, basically. So they are an ally to the ruling class at any given time. So their purpose is to numb the pain of the oppressed people. So they will always play that duality of saying, the people must pray. The people must know that the future is in heaven, where everything is plenty, and therefore don't worry too much. Don't fight. Don't trouble the apple cart, as I said. Leave these things when in future you will have a better life. So they will always play that role. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Elder Sam. Thank you very much. Let me get to Sister Sister, you are free to share something with us now, or you can also let us know if you want us to pass. Sister?
Well, I'm very interested in what Brother Sam was saying, because but I was also the two sentences before the last, where it talks about democratic capitalism and cooperative socialism. And at the end of it, I suddenly wondered if the church wasn't trying to play a middle ground between being both of those things. They don't, even though they have all the gold and glitter, they don't really want to show too much of their capitalism, so that it can be criticized. It may be there, but it's hidden. And in the same way, they don't necessarily want to show too much of their socialism, though it may be there and play a part in what keeps them always about, that they don't disappear completely. That's the thing that sort of out of it all really means something to me, because I think, well, how have the church managed to survive? They've had all these people who've always criticized them, and yet they survive. They're always surviving. Even when they lose a bit of money, they may close down, but they're still there. And to me, I think that they try to bridge the gap between, because I'm trying to think, what does democratic capitalism really mean? Capitalism is capitalism, so what's democratic about it? And in the same way, socialism, is it cooperative socialism? Do people really, I mean, in the days when the Iron Curtain, I said Russia was being really mocked about trying to be socialist, and they hid behind what they were really doing. Was it really cooperative? So I query both those two things. Apart from that, have I got a lot more out of this all? I think I have questions. That's really what I have.
Thank you, Sister. I'll let you answer on your questions. But, Sister, towards the last sentence of the first paragraph, they are saying that, first paragraph, they say, so impressive were the insinuations of Berkeleyan doublespeak that the grateful church rewarded him with a bishopric. Does it mean the church is also a support to attempt to explain the practice in what you call doublespeak?
No, that's what I'm trying to say, that it's got its middle ground is between those two things, and there's always double speak about it. So it attracts those who are capitalists, and it attracts those who are socialists in their ideas, because the church bridges both gaps, and it's totally ruthless in how it does it, in that it will be all things to all people at different times, and hence manage to survive. That's what I think I'm learning from this.
Okay. And how about this line that says that God is the one who put ideas in our mind?
Who knows where ideas come from? They're always a mystery. It's like, and also like I've just been watching someone paint something, and you just think, how did he do that? What made him think like that? How, the end result was like everybody was just going, wow, wow, wow. Where do ideas come from? Do we know? Artists are always fighting the fact, or some artists are always fighting the fact that ideas attach themselves to them and they can't let go. And they can't, and yet they can't leave their art alone. It's sometimes to some of them it's a
Okay.
it's a trouble. And I think it's not just artists, all people who get ideas that they don't know how to explain, but they keep them going, pushing them. A lot of people don't want those ideas. They don't want to be to hear or see things that they can't explain. So I don't know.
Okay.
Ideas are
Then in that line side, can ideas both be positive and negative?
undoubtedly. I mean, if they work in your favor, of course they're positive. But
So
if they're troubling you, then no, it's not necessary. It can be very negative for some people. It can be, it can, and people don't necessarily want to be apart from other people. They just want to live normally and with everybody sort of just normal. But some ideas just trouble people so badly that makes them seem abnormal.
okay.
And not in the time, not necessary in the time that they're living in.
Okay.
For some people.
Society, where is the mind?
Pardon? What is the mind?
Where is the mind?
Where is the mind, or what is the mind?
Yes. Can there be mind without the brain? The brain part of the body?
Brother Pigman, all I can say is that the fact that people can go into comas for years and years and then come out of a coma. Where is the mind indeed? I don't know.
But basically, if we try to do an analysis a bit, I think Brother Kwame had talk of this sometimes back, for example. The aspect of minding or thinking is the work of the brain. The brain, the whole process of minding and the whole process of thinking takes place in the brain. So basically, there cannot be mind without brain. But here, you see the last sentence again that I wanted to engage you. Is saying that even our body is just in our mind. How do you find that, sister? To say that even our body is in our mind.
Well, I do think that the mind has, that the body can heal any part of the body. No, let me rephrase that. That the body, is it the body or the mind? That the body can heal, given the chance. So whether it's because the mind heals it, or other things heal it, I just know that the body has a certain power within itself that can heal people when they're sick.
But if the mind is a part of the brain, is the brain that does the minding, and brain is part of the body, how can the body then be part of mind, and not mind being part of the body?
Hey, me, I don't know.
It's okay.
The brain and the mind.
It's okay.
They're not the same thing.
I was just trying to jog your mind a bit. At least by trying to ask these questions, you try to see the faults in between. But yes, anybody.
Well, I think they're the same thing. The brain and the mind. I think they're the same thing.
Is there? If you open your head, can you see a part of mind and some part of brain? Like if you open your hand, there's the brain, but can you see also mind?
That's all you'll see. You won't see a mind because the brain is the mind, isn't it?
Now you see. So brain, as you're saying, brain is the physical representation of the mind.
Okay, yeah, you could say that. I have no objection to that at all.
But how can then the body be the mind, in the mind?
How can the body be in the mind? Well, your brain and your mind can't work without. Well, I don't know. I hope it can't work without your body.
Okay, before
Because
you
that would be seriously awful.
probably
don't
if
know.
we leave this session, we'll be able to have the answers from members who are present here to try to see if that really, because that's what Berkeley is basically saying. Berkeley is basically saying that your body is in your mind. While we
Your body is your mind.
no, your body is in your mind.
Well, they're interlinked, aren't they?
The
Have
mind,
to be interlinked.
the mind is part of the brain.
But the mind is also part of the body. The brain is also part of the body.
So the brain is part of the body. Basically, the mind is part of the body, not the body being part of the, not the body being in the mind. The mind is part of the body.
Well, they're all interlinked. Like my big toe, I may not know what it's always up to, but you know, or what it thinks, but it's there. It's part of my body.
Let me pass to Brother the King, but we'll keep. If you want to engage on this, can feel free to engage on this. Brother the King.
Comrade, greetings.
Greetings.
Yeah, so about the mind and the idea kind of a thing. I recall some time ago, I read from some place that where we get ideas from are actually more, I don't know, Brother Carrington will be able to explain because he's a physicist. According to what I read, there is a universal frequency that emits from all the protective agencies in terms of like the sun, all the the surrounding, the animals, they all adhere to this universal frequency, to which our subconscious mind is the one that received this frequency. Once you are tuned in properly, this frequency, you are tuning to this frequency, the ideas or the communication that come from this universal frequency is what come into our subconscious mind as an idea, has submitted to our conscious mind, and then the thought process goes through before we submit it to our heart and then make execute what it is that we want to make it happen. According to what I read and where they call this constellation and all those things, they are all intertwined. So is there any way Brother Carrington can clarify that scientifically?
Carrington?
Thank you very much, Brother the King. I am not familiar with the idea of a universal frequency. I am, however, familiar with the idea of a universal energy fields. So there are these things I will send in the chat called quantum fields. An example of a quantum field, a simple quantum field, is the electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic field, disturbances in the electromagnetic field, just like disturbances in the pole, create a wave called an electromagnetic wave. And this is what we call light and radio and Wi-Fi. So as to whether this interacts with animals, I know there are some animals who are very, very sensitive to the magnetic field of the earth and adjust their navigations respectively. My proposition, not my proposition, it's not my theory, but where I think ideas come from is where I think dreams come from, nightmares, etc. Ideas come from the mind because the mind is very, very similar in function, not in form, to generative AI, ChatGPT, etc. The mind is not a receiver of information, it is a generator of information, which is then verified by your senses. So your ideas come out of this capacity or setting of the mind to generate very, very many ideas, very, very many visions at the same time. Most of these are usually unsuccessful or unreal, and we call them dreams, we call them delusions, but some of these work out, and we call them visions and ideas. Yeah.
Brother Kang,
I'm
thank
not a
you.
very big psychologist, but I guess that's what happens.
No, thank you a bit. I wanted to follow up before I go back to Brother the King. You've said in the chat that by saying that our brain are carried in our mind, it is basically alleging that our body is what the mind does, which means the mind generates ideas. So our body is an idea of the mind.
Yes, according to Berkeley. Yeah, of course, whether I agree is another.
But you see now, that is idealist position.
Yes.
We want to also, I think Nkrumah is trying to point this so that we can see also the weakness in part of this. If we agree that mind is part of the brain, it's the work of brain, doing the minding, the thinking, is the work of the brain.
Yes.
Then the brain is a physical part of the body.
Yes.
Which basically means that the mind is part of the body. It can't be that the body exists in the mind. It can't be that the body is an idea of the mind.
Yes, but the issue is that you're thinking about this already from a materialist position. So
That is, and I think that's where
an idealist will start from the mind.
Now, that's why we need to point this, and I want to give you a categorical example. For example, if we think that bad governance in a country, for example, let's take it now to context of a country. If we think that bad governance is just an idea we have in mind, and it's not a reality of what's going on the ground, then how will you react to that? Vis-a-vis, if we know that bad governance is true, it's something true, it's not an idea, it's physical. And you see, that mainly what takes the differences between how idealists approach a situation in a country. For example, if you are an idealist and no bad governance thing of the mind, what do? You go pray for it. So we are praying God to help us change bad governance so that we have good governance. If you are a materialist, what do? You work on ensuring that you change the bad leader. To you, it's not something like it's just an imagination, it's a thinking. It's a reality, and what you can do is changing. But then they know it's something like a dream or that ideas or perceptions, so they pray for it. Those differences in terms of approach has a lot of implication on how we react and actually correspond to what is surrounding us.
That is true. That is exactly true. But let me just look for something. Okay, yeah, here it is. I feel like we are also underestimating idealism. So let me read for you a very interesting quote. I was reading in a book, I think last week. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. So this is an idealist's position of fear. A materialist will say this is fear is a biological reaction, okay? But an idealist will say fear is an idea in my mind. And if it is an idea in my mind, I have total control. And if I have total control, I can reject it. And therefore, it gives me power over it. So also idealists can come into conceptualizations of the universe where they can say they are in control. And I'm sure you've heard of idealists talking like this story called manifesting. I am manifesting wealth. I am manifesting I don't know what. I am manifesting a trip. This is the idealist telling themselves that if I think it, it will become real.
And you think it's part of the prosperity gospel anyway. That I'm going to pray, you're going to have a vehicle, and you say yes. Anyways, okay. Let me get back to brother the King if you still have something. Then Sister Ada will come back to you very briefly, and then I'll go to other people in line. I hope now other members have been able to form their thinking. So I'll go to after the King and Sister Ada. I'll go to brother Joseph. The King.
Yeah, I think the idealist thinking that the body is in the mind maybe could be suggesting that some way, somehow, the body works in connection with the mind, that the mind is the engine or the operating system of the body. So if they are trying to say the body is in the mind, maybe that is what they mean.
It's okay. You're free to share your thinking. Anything else you want to share your thinking on the text?
Oh, I'm okay with what I have so far, I think.
Okay, Sister Ada?
Yeah. Brother Carrington reminded me when he was talking about electromagnetic fields. It reminded me of the scientists who did the electricity test on frogs' legs and made them move. And I'm not certain because I don't know it's proven, but I think that there is electricity that runs through people and also makes their muscles move. Brother Carrington, you know what experiment I'm talking about? I don't remember his name.
Yes,
It's
some
probably French.
Italian.
Oh, Italian. Okay.
Yeah. Let me just find it quickly. I've forgotten, but you are correct. This is a medically proven fact. Even when your heart, when a heart stops, there's those electric shocks that are put on
Yes.
your heart to start it up. So yes, our body functions very, very deeply on electricity, and the brain is just also an exchange of charges. Signals are moved in the brain through the exchange of electric charges, essentially. Charge and discharge, charge and discharge. Yeah.
So you can charge the body.
To a limit before you electrocute yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
But thank you, Sister Ada. Brother Joseph? Elder Joseph? Joseph Antoine?
Yeah, sorry, I got to connect, mix up with the Zoom. Anyway, good conversation. I think there are certain words we need to look at when discussing some of these ideas or concepts. One of it is paradox. Paradoxical. That something could be true and untrue at the same time. Also, the concept of dichotomy. One of the problems I think that we face is that we have sort of chopped things so much that rather than see the whole, we see only the parts. But having said that, I would suspect in terms of the passage where the guy was rewarded with the bishopship or so, this is what happened. And this week I saw something, related to that. I saw Malema. Malema is one of my, one of the people I really admire. And he was addressing a church. And the kind of homage you were paying to the church or saying like, I am at your service. And you might think that Malema, when he talks that Malema is like this brand communist or whatever it is, Marxist and things, but he was a sort of, I would say, praising the power of the church. So it's the influence, as it says, the passage of the church is still there up to now in modern times. So how do we escape that kind of influencing? I would say. But certainly, then we have to check that in the days when this was written or when these conversations were happening, there are not much conversation or knowledge of neuroscience. Now we have a new scientific processes. We can decipher things that were not able. And some of the leading psychotherapists And psychiatrists and psychologists have said the body doesn't lie. So everything that happened to you is stored in the body. So when we're discussing the idea of what is the mind and what is the body, we probably need to tread cautiously, because the problem, I think, started with folks like Descartes, who said, well, I think so I am, and then also that discounts the concept of soul and that kind of thing. So that's where some of the confusion probably would have evolved from. So I think we need to be mindful of that. But certainly the power of the church is still here, very much. I think I will stop here.
Yeah, thank you for pointing out, and Joseph, thank you for pointing out that quote, I think, therefore I am. It's a lot, because we've covered it in the past reading as well. But how will you differentiate the impact of that word, I think, therefore I am, with the word I am because you are?
But I think that's where the unity comes. And that's where I use the word dichotomy, where we chop up things. So we don't see sameness in differences. You know, there's a book called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. I think it's written by a guy called Jonathan Sachs. And he talks about, for instance, how his mother literally disappeared because when she suffered from Alzheimer's, her whole brain was eliminated. I mean, was destroyed. So he said, I remember there's a quote where he said, he quotes this person that says in the book, I can't wait for when this thing happened to me, when my whole existence would be no more just like my mother. Because the concept of the brain and the mind comes into very sharp focus here, whether a person who is suffering with, who have lost the function of the brain is really alive, or really able, cognitive, or able to be empirical or rational, that kind of thing, and probably not, but they're physically alive. So I think it's much more deeper, and we should tread with a little caution in terms of without dismissing too quickly, because
Yeah,
it is deep.
yeah, I'm really trying to understand how deep can that be, because if you're, like you said, our word I am therefore, no, I am because you are, brings an element of unity and teamwork and togetherness.
Yeah.
So within the people embrace that. How about the impact of the word I think therefore I am? How does it
No,
shape that person's thinking and mentality, or the person who
no,
believes in the topic?
I think when this is emphasized, it creates this unity, it creates this integration, and probably it justifies things like capitalism and so on. Because don't forget also the evolution of the concept of capitalism, and even to some extent socialism or communism, created created a way of thinking where everything was centered around commodities and so on and material stuff, but life is much more than that. It's about stories we tell ourselves, about the relationships we have, and all of that. Interconnection. And I think that where the statement you said, Pigeon, about we are because I am, whatever.
Okay, and Elder Joseph, before you go, I really want to engage your thinking on this second paragraph. This sentence I've asked before that says that I have already said that humanism branch off into democratic capitalism and cooperative socialism. What can you say about those two terms?
Well, I think, for instance, when it's about democratic capitalism, I think these are just narratives that have been trying. It's just like with the guy who tried not to upset the church by saying, talking about Descartes and Leibniz, if I'm pronouncing his name properly, and it's only after they died or so, those young people see that they had alternative ideas. I think when you check, we have equated capitalism with democracy and all that kind of thing, but they're not related. Because look at what is happening even in China. China have capitalism in its thing now. So it's a matter of, to me, the arrangement of the economy that has taken precedence over everything else, whether it's in socialism or communism, or capitalism.
Okay, and this element of cooperative socialism, does it imply that socialism is not about cooperation? So there's a socialism that is not about cooperative.
But I think that's where the confusion comes in. I think that's where we're trying to kind of cover, because either you cooperative or you capitalist. I mean, what is democratic about capitalism when it's about profit accumulation? And if you and I said last week in terms of the evolution of capitalism, which was heavily influenced by John Calvin, the Calvinists and so on, who said work hard and earn and that kind of thing, whereas the Catholic Church had emphasized staying poor and working and being in the together and that kind of thing, suffering together, that kind of thing. So it needs to be looked at. These are, to me, concepts that are evolved maybe to mask the real situation.
Thank you.
Because even in the scripture in Acts 2:42, it is said the first experience of Buddha in the Western, according to Western philosophy or Western Christianity, with first experience of socialism, communism, and so where it said that the followers, those who were impressed by the teachings of the one called Jesus and Paul and so on, they later Paul, they gave everything up. They shared. They surrendered individual ownership or so and held everything in common. So we see, even then, you can see the contradiction or the paradox where on one hand, in fact, there's a part that says that you can't go by a group to heaven. As before, where in terms of Judaism, where the family, you could have get to that place through the good works of your family and so on. Wherever that was, it's saying that you have to do it individually. There are passages in the scripture that say that. So in some part it's saying that it has to be done collectively, and then the other part say, no, you must do it alone.
Okay, thank you, Elder Sam. Elder.
By the way, sorry, I want to use this opportunity to ask Brother Sam from South Africa to. I need to be in touch with him, please. So leave your information for me so that I could talk to you after the meeting. I really need to talk to you, Brother Sam.
Okay, thank you, Elder Sam. You wanted to say something before I go to Brother Coco. Let me know when you are ready to speak. But I go to Sir Windhoek after Elder Sam.
No, brother Pigeon. I just wanted to make an input when you were talking about the issue of I think and therefore I am. And I wanted to remind ourselves that we must remember that these philosophies were based on those Aristotles that wanted always to maintain that there's lesser beings and higher beings. And these higher beings are the ones that have the capacity to think. And the lesser beings are those that don't even have that capacity. And those will remain in a capitalistic world, individualistic world. The people that are the downtrodden, that are actually used as serfs and exploited with their labor. I think that was the philosophy that we have learned, that the thinking was that we are the thinkers and they are just there to be drawers of water and hewers of wood. Thanks.
Thank you, Elder Sam. You've reminded us of who sometimes back we came across when they said the slaves were not even having democratic rights. They were not given political rights because they believed that they never had the ability to make such decisions. So they were inferior in terms of thinking, basically. And then, of course, also they supported the aspect that they are either naturally slaves and some are naturally superior. Thank you for pointing us to that as well, Elder Sam. Sawindok? 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 Okay. Let me get to Brother Coco or Sister Mara. Is any of you ready to speak?
Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Brother Coco.
Thank you. This is a tricky one, but I somehow want to agree with my my brother from our kingdom, the Lesotho kingdom. Elder Sam has lots and lots of wisdoms from our ancestors. So I will walk in his footsteps and say what he has to say. But I think to throw a spanner in the works, I have a question here, which will say, what comes first? Is it the church or the rulers? Who creates the other? Is it the church or is it the rulers? And once you start to think about that, it works out to more or less the same question which we've been asking Sister Ida on which comes first. Is it the mind or is it the body? Because according to Berkeley, he wanted to say, because I think I can think something, and then there it is in my head. All right. He wants to take away the power of something to exist. It can only exist in his mind, which amazingly it doesn't make sense, because we can see these things, they are there. We don't make them with our minds. We don't make them with our eyes. Of course, if you no longer use your mind, if you no longer use your eyes, your ears, you can no longer taste these things. You can no longer see them. You can no longer hear them. But that doesn't mean they don't exist. That doesn't mean they don't exist. Therefore, it goes back to what Datemuta was saying, that some people have been born with the power to think, whereas the others, they don't think. They are serfs. And we saw that in Greece, it started with Plato, and it continued with Aristotle, who introduced a limited form of democracy, a fake form of democracy, using similar concepts. All right. So we are here where we are, which again is a 360-degree turn, or 180 degree turn from what we were talking about last week. Because there is an English philosopher who had said, we are born with nothing, with no ideas, with just the mind. I think it's Locke. But we start to have those ideas as we grow up. So in a way, he took out God from the equation. But this week again, they have brought God to say, God, put the ideas in the mind. God put the ideas in the mind. And I like what you were asking, Sister Ida, at some point, to say, if the ideas can both be evil and good, then if it's God who put them in you, then God is evil. God is evil, God is good. But most of the time, the believers will tell you that God is good, which doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. If God can give you a bad idea, then he is evil. And if you go according to the stuff which are written in the Bible, where he favors one tribe over other tribes, then he is a biased God. He's not a good God. Then, in that sense, all we have been given, the idea of a God who is, above everything, it doesn't exist. doesn't exist. But unfortunately, this is what plagiarism does. Because the idea of a God, if it started in Africa, the Africans knew what the God was. God is creation itself. God is the life you see in others. And God is both female and male. But they take that and change it to something else. Because it's again ideas. It's their misunderstanding. Is where we have religion, we create stuff which we don't understand. We can't really fathom this stuff, so we have to put something in there which makes sense for us. That's why they say, God said, let's create a human in our likeness. Who was there when God was thinking about all of these things? Who was there? Tell me. It's nuts. It's nuts. But it also goes back down to somebody saying, God gave you ideas. If God gave us all ideas, let's think, shouldn't we have all thrived? Shouldn't we be all living comfortably everywhere? Should there be want if God was this good and was giving everybody ideas? Should human beings killing each other if God was giving them ideas? So this is Osajefo asking again to always think deep, think outside the box, and don't accept anything you are given without really turning it in your mind and thinking it over and over. But at the same time, he doesn't want us to waste time without thinking about the way forward. We should always think about the ideological framework which we should use to liberate Africa, because Africa still remains in chains because of that lack of thinking which our ancestors at 63 showed. They just took what they were told. They took the colonial education they were told and they went with it. But I cannot blame them, because most of us, all of us, before we were awakened, we were thinking everything that we were told. We would just go by it. But here, let me stop here.
Brother Coco, you are raising another very important point. Thank you for coming in and sharing your thinking in regards to this text. But I think you are raising a very pertinent question, and it's basically trying to poke hole, and I think Nkrumah is trying to give us this thing so that we can think and see the inefficiencies or some gaps. Because I would say I like how Nkrumah write this thing. It's extra mile to expose to you everything else, so that as he makes the final conclusion, you're with him in the journey. It's not that he's becoming selective enough, you see? He's trying to say, okay, this is Brother Coco, this is who he is, and this is how he looks like, and this is what he thinks. And this is Brother Pigeon, and this is how he is, and this is how... And when now Nkrumah said, this is me. Because you see, the basic aspect here is trying to look at philosophy in the society. And societies are having two antagonistic sides. One is a society that is pure idealist, and one is a society that is materialist. Consensusism is not a pure materialist. That's why in the previous paragraph, Nkrumah said, we take matter not as a sole reality, but as just a primary reality. Which means, being primary, we accept secondary realities, which is their derivatives and convergence, what we call the conversion. So spirits and ideas, we don't say they don't exist, but they exist from matter. Which then materialists don't believe that spirits and ideas exist. And hardcore spiritualists, hardcore idealists, also don't believe in the existence of matter, like what Berkeley is trying to explain here. Berkeley don't believe in the existence of body. To him, body is just an idea in the mind. You see? And there are people who also don't believe in the existence of spirits at all. You see? But consciousness is trying to analyze both two antagonistic positions in the world and try to come with a position that take both consideration, and that consideration is not only based on some feeling, but by accepting that, of course, we believe and we accept that the spirits of our ancestors in traditional African society, we could please the spirits of our ancestors, we could appease them, we could offer our burnt sacrifices, and we believe that their spirits could guide us. So we cannot say that there is no spirits. We cannot say that the society is not made up of any spirits at all. You see? We cannot say that people are not made up of any ideas at all. Because yes, they are ideas. But we cannot almost say that those ideas or those spirits can exist without a body, without any matter, without any physical origin. You see? So there's already, as you see, there's already a struggle in a society. There are two warring parts in a society. And there's a bit of how to come to a proper conclusive decision on how to get a society that's African society that can then give the Africans people a philosophy and an ideology that can actually totally decolonize Africa. Because that is the purpose of consciousness. How do you decolonize Africa? And decolonizing Africa is not by saying, yes, there's no spirits existing, there's no ideas totally. I think that anything that exists is a person and matter. Even the person, we accept that in the person as a physical being, which you call now matter as a primary state, has a brain, and the brain will do the minding or thinking, and out of minding there will be ideas. But you cannot say that the ideas, that the body and the physical part of the body is just an idea. And even if it's an idea of mind which exists where? The mind must exist from something. So these are the things that are the biggest problem in societies today. And I think this is what Nkrumah is trying to help us see how we can arrive at them, by poking holes and trying to critically examine. And that's why he was actually previous. You remember previously when we were talking about the idea of a perfect society and a final society.
Yeah, I remember that took a long time of debate.
Yeah, there's nothing like a perfect society. There's nothing like a perfect society. When Greek were trying to form what they call a perfect society, and I think in the previous chapter we also read when people travel and they came back, they realized there's a lot of things that goes on, you see? So it's not basically what their society was all about. So that's what I'm trying also to add on to the conversation. But yes, you can go ahead and maybe finish your thinking, then I go to Joseph, then I go to Sister Myra.
Yes, just to conclude, using again what you just said there, the dialectical materialism or dialectics itself. Dialectics is about conflicting sides of, every question has two sides or more. And if you think carefully about that, we got independence, and naturally, as Africans, we are communalists. We are socialists by nature. And hence, it would have been easy just to adopt that way of living, that style of living. But having been colonized by the Westerners, who were then under the influence of capitalism coming from America, it meant there was a lot of pressure from the West, who wanted us to take or adopt democratic principles. I mean, not democratic, I mean capitalist principles. So again, here we see the conflict between socialist principles and capitalist principles. And this happened again during the Cold War, when communism was tagged as the invisible enemy of the West. Hence, anyone who just started talking about communism or socialism or saying they want ties with Soviet Union, they were a sworn enemy of the West, including Lumumba when he threatened to talk to the Soviets when the United Nations couldn't drive the Belgians out of Belgian Congo out of Congo in 1960. So it's about dialectics. Is about the conflict, which is constant. All the time there's a conflict happening. It's a matter of who gets to the top. There is an ongoing revolution in life. And I think we need to allow that to happen. And we need to have a growth mindset, which allows us to take ideas from different sides and experiment, but get what is right for us, not being constrained by fear or by thinking things which won't happen, because I think we are now constrained by fear. I like the poem which my brother read there about fear. Fear really is holding us back right now as Africans. That's the reason why we can't unite, because we are scared of each other. The Anglophones, or those countries who speak English, are scared of those who speak French. They think they are going to dominate them. The other ones are also scared. That's the problem within the African Union itself. That's why we still have those foreign languages which are being used. And those who don't speak Swahili are also scared of taking Swahili as a language, which we should be adopting, or looking at other African languages which we can use in addition to Swahili. But the problem is in the mind, and we are putting problems there. But if we start to think carefully, we'll realize that there is nothing there except what we put. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Coco. I'll go to Brother Joseph. But there's something you've mentioned that takes me back to what I'd shared about Dr. Haiti, Georgia Haiti. But they just informed me that we have a Sunday book review of Dr. Georgia Haiti's book called Defeating Dictators. And basically it says something, but I'll just paraphrase it, not for comments. It said that one man, one vote came to many African countries one time. And once captured, this centralized power is used to settle all scores, loot treasury, squash any opposition, perpetuate oneself into office. Presidents use their power to enrich themselves and their cronies and advance the economic and political interests of a particular group while excluding others. The politics of exclusion and quasi-apartheid. The richest persons in Africa are often the heads of the states and prime ministers. So it basically brings that competition of let's take all this, it's about ourselves. If we get out of power, what will they do to us? And I think it's in line with the fear you're trying to talk about, Brother Coco. Brother Joseph, then I'll go to Sister Myra.
Yeah, I think it was Brother Coco who said in contributing to that or whoever, that if God is, he has favorites, he have this group, over that group, then he's a biased God. And of course, God is not just he, of course, but there is, and I support what he says. But I also want to draw people's attention to that there is a passage in Isaiah, can't remember the exact one, that says, I make good and I make good and I make evil. I kill and I give life, and none can escape me. So the idea that the God that we have been imposed, on us, is a God that only deals with the nice part of life. And life, anything that is rough, it had to be fair, it had to be run away from rather than to be understood. In fact, I am told, because I used to be a theological student, that the concept, the dichotomy with Western religion, particularly Christianity, and then Islam and Judaism, and some, starting with Judaism, started when the captivity of the Hebrews, or so, whatever you call them, into what is now Iran. And the Persia, and the folks was fascinated by a concept, the Zoroastrian practice about good and evil. If when something good happened, that's attributed to God, and when something bad happened, that attributed to the devil. So we attribute things to the different sides of, the reality we have constructed in our mind. But I would also suggest that Tandy Newton, that woman from British-born woman who is of Zimbabwean English origin, there was a talk she gave, Embracing Otherness is Embracing Myself, in which, to me, you can get some understanding how the self is formed, how we end up being able, thinking that we have, and how we're always trying to fit in and that kind of thing. It would be helpful for people if they could, source that and listen to them, because she also mentioned about what's happening in the Congo. Is about 13 or 14 years ago, she did the stuff, I think it was 2011. But it would help to broaden our understanding how we arrive our thinking. Don't forget, and I was thinking about it the other day. I remember in preschool, I was taught God is in heaven. He is looking down at you, and he blah blah blah. And to me, it took me a while before, even still, the residue of that in my system. Not that I ascribe to that, but it's had, because it said first impression is lasting impression, the effect. And finally, we are told that trauma can remain 14 generations. Current studies in neuroscience and so on, and psychology and therapy and so on, are showing that trauma can remain in a person 14 generations. But what about also, we are told that we are carrying our ancestors' nose and mouth and so on. So we need to think about that also.
Thank you, Elder
Life
Joseph.
is a continuum. Life is a continuum, and it is fertilized by our experience as we go along.
Thank you, Brother Joseph, for making it more deeper. Yes.
I really need Brother Sam to reach out to me, please.
My Brother Sam will chat you, or I'll share your contact. I'll share Brother Sam contact on his authority once the meeting is over. I'll share it with you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Sister Mara, psychology has been touched a bit. You might be better understanding this than us, some of us here, but yeah, feel free to tie that level of your expertise in that field as well as you also share your thinking with us, Sister Mara.
I'm so sorry, Brother Pigeon. I'm not totally with it. This session. Hopefully, I'll be more. I'll be more with it next week. Sorry, I'll pass.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Okay, but Sister Mara, is it possible that the child mind, when the child is born, the mind is empty?
It's difficult to say. I wish I could remember my own experience. But I think as the child grows, they definitely start to understand perception of themselves and their environment, and they start to differentiate between their self and their parents and the society. I think they get a lot of a sense of the world around them from their environment.
So the environment is what creates more of ideas in their mind, as who they interact with and how they interact as they grow up.
How they interact, yes,
Ideas
as
in their
their
mind.
sense of self grows, yeah.
So it's not what Berkeley says that God is the one who put the idea in their mind. Okay. I'll not tell you much to that, Sister Sister Maya. But yes, comrades, this text, there were a few things that we were supposed to have discussed. So let me look at them again if we have exhausted what we were to discuss. Few things. The first thing was to analyze Berkeley's philosophy and its implication on empiricism. Brother Carrington, did you do that? Did you check on the implication of Berkeley to empiricism?
No, we haven't. Sister Ida told me to check about whether he was a priest. He was not a priest before. He was, in fact, a politician. What am I to check?
Out of our analysis of Berkeley's philosophy, what are its implications for empiricism?
Oh, yeah.
Does it relate?
Yes.
Or this is a double speak?
Okay. Are you asking my opinion, or do you want me?
I'm asking your opinion.
Oh, yes, it has definite implications for empiricism. The Osagyefo starts with, in the philosophy of Berkeley, empiricism appears to be endorsed. Berkeley, because it's the Renaissance, and science is starting to become more and more important. As we have said, Descartes and Leibniz were mathematicians and scientists. Science is becoming important, and therefore the importance of sense data is becoming clear. However, how do we interpret the importance of sense data with respect to the behavior of the brain or the mind. So definitely empiricism is being recognized, but this is an attempt, as I would understand it, to fit the rising empiricism within older philosophies of idealism.
Thank
Although
you.
empiricism is more comfortable, of course, with materialism.
Okay, the second role that we are to look at is the role of church in influencing philosophical thoughts. And I think we are seeing how Descartes and Leibniz were afraid of expressing their philosophical thoughts just because they never wanted to go against the church.
Church is a political power, even in Kenya, where we say we are a relatively free speech country, where anybody can criticize the president or anybody in power. As you have remembered, people were getting arrested over the casket pictures. So people have started censoring, the casket pictures have disappeared. So it is a similar manner in which you are negotiating essentially with power. How far can you go without injuring power structures, essentially?
Okay, thank you for that. Then the biggest thing is the few questions we are to look at. How does Berkeley's philosophical stance reflect the broader challenge of decolonizing Africans' minds and intellectual frameworks?
So you raised, I will say my opinion, and other people will give their positions. You raised a very important issue of how an idealist interprets the world, and I told you of this specific way in which idealism can be allowed to sort of remind people of their power over their societies and the world. But generally speaking, idealism reduces, in my opinion, I'm open to being corrected. Idealism reduces your ability to act. And you actually rejected my explanation by saying that this thing of manifesting, you are not actually working towards a goal. You are hoping that some god somewhere or some ancestor or somebody in the ideal plane will bless you with car, wealth, prosperity, health, etc. And therefore, it reduces your ability to deal with problems, right? If you can outsource the solution of your problems to beings much more powerful than you, then your ability to solve these problems is reduced. And it could be used actually to explain the malaise in Africa, right? People are going out to protest, maybe for reforms in Uganda, the release of political prisoners, including the most prominent Kizza Besigye in Uganda, and you get 20 people going out into the street because 50 million Ugandans believe that Uganda is cursed. 60 million Kenyans believe that Kenya is cursed. 1.3 billion Africans believe that Africa is cursed, such that 60%, 70% of our young people want to leave Africa. While if this 70% of the young people actually just sat down to work on the continent will change rapidly and quickly. So this is a problem of idealism, right? Going to lands where there are greener pastures, while the greenest pastures on earth are in Congo, you see? So that is a problem of idealism. The amount of stories, going on in the head are difficult. We can reform our societies by our own very action, and this is a problem that the continent is facing. However, young people are becoming less and less idealist. They're believing this story that there's something fundamentally wrong with Uganda, Kenya, Congo, Sudan, that there's something fundamentally wrong. They can see bad governance for what it is. And that is why the young people of Kenya have been on fire and remain on fire on social media and in the street, fighting for their rights, because they can see that the problems they are facing are material and physical, and that they can do something about this material and physical problems. So this is the dance again, the dialectic of materialism and idealism in the continent.
Thank you, Brother Carrington, for that. Raspala, are you able to share your thinking? I saw you came late, but are you free to share your thinking? Because I've gone through all round to everybody else, unless there's somebody who wants to share their thinking before we end. Raspala?
Yes, my Lord. Give thanks and up the leg and to everyone at large. Okay, no, I'll just say, my brother, as I'm starting to digest this class of today, now all I can say is that it's true when they say the ideas come from God, because you need to look at DNA. What is DNA? DNA is basically the genetic material of all our ancestors who ever lived. So if your characteristics are based on someone in your family who once lived or is still alive, then that already tells you that your body, your mind does not really belong to you, but it belongs to the collective Black people who created you in this to be alive. So, and also the issue of gods, I did explain that those are the collective Black people who created everything on earth. So if God is physical and black,
But
just like us,
you are arriving at a point Brother Joseph had said, and I think he was quoting the creation, that let us make man in our own image. Do you want to say that was a black man speaking?
yeah, that was a black man speaking to another black man and woman, my man. In fact, that was a caucus of scientists who are saying that. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, my point was that, anyway, my main point before I close was that God is physical. We must not just think God is something that is unisex and does not exist in a physical realm. No, God is our ancestors. Blessed.
Wow, that's a wonderful way to end this. Yes, is there anybody who still have something to share with us? We still have 5 minutes in regards to the text. Feel free.
Cheers.
Yes, Elder Sam.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit about that idealism, the effect that it has on the revolution and the struggle for liberation. I think it's a two-pronged system, this idealism. To those who subscribe to it and believe in it, it is their sole reason of existence. It fortifies them. They live according to that. They are the chosen race. They are the chosen group. They are there given the power to lead and rule. And to the oppressed people, it stifles their stand up. It starves them. It makes them not, the philosophy that says when somebody hits you this cheek, give him the left side, give him the right side. This thing that I said earlier on, no, don't fight now. Your future is in heaven, where you will have everything in abundance. Meanwhile, the future should be here on earth, where you are having all in abundance. So it is a two-pointed edge sword in both directions. So we need to be able to see through that for those who are oppressed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you've pointed at a topic that's interesting. How does it impact the revolution? When in one side, the young people want to go to the street to remove Ruto. On the other side, the churches are talking about morality. The young people should be moral enough, and what they're doing is not moral, and whether they are saying, oh, we should pray, and then there's a group of people who are praying for changes to happen in a country. There's a group of people in the street fighting the system. And then there's a president who says that he was not elected, he was elected by God. And that's what President Ruto said to the people. But he's not afraid of what people are saying, he was elected by God. Such type of thinking has a serious implication in regards to how we as a people are to actually liberate ourselves. So I think we need to look beyond just in this, but also look at the impact of these ideologies or these philosophies in line to what we are fighting for, which is decolonizing Africa, how they are going to impact our decolonization process, and how we need actually to overcome them so that we can successfully achieve the decolonization of Africa as a people. Because there's a lot really when you look at this aspect of humanism and the aspect of taking center stage to God, and the idea of how church is embracing people who have this double speaking to make them bishopric, and the idea of even how people imagine that your existence is just an imagination of your mind and your thinking. There's a lot on how this impact us, and also the element of empiricism. How should we then rely on empiricism, especially evidence and data driven, to make decisions rather than prayers, ideas, and so-called spiritualities? It's only 1 minute to go. Elder Joseph, it's only 1 minute. Can you say something in a minute?
Saying that the influence of the church or religion is continuing to affect the whole evolution of our society. Because, for instance, when it comes to culture being one of the things that keep the main glue, it is affecting the culture a lot, because people, as was said earlier, wants to go to heaven instead of live down here together, Thanks.
Thank you very much. Comrades, we have actually come to an end of this class. We will continue with delving deeper to how now actually humanism leads to democratic capitalism or cooperative socialism, as we'll be looking at Leibniz. And I will share the books of Leibniz in our library. If you haven't joined our library, feel free to join our library. We'll be sharing the books of Leibniz tomorrow. And to the people of Southern Africa, know that we have also shared the book of Moshoshe. Is it called Moshoshe or Mosose? One of the elders. Yeah, we have a book of Moshoshe, I think, in our library, Baba Koko. You need to check on that. I think he's the founding father of the Lesotho and the southern part of Africa. So, comrades, let's meet next Thursday. This Saturday we'll also have a conversation, I think, on issues to do also with Malawi a bit. We are friends from Malawi who have been fighting a lot, the Malawi government and system and corruption in Africa as general. And on Saturday, I will also be part of the speakers in the Black African, the Black History Month, hosted by One Map Africa. I'll actually be speaking after Arikara Chiombora. The meeting will be virtual. I've shared the link, and I'll be speaking on how to revive Pan-Africanism in this contemporary Africa as well. So we look forward to those events. On Sunday, we'll be doing another reading of the book, Defeating Dictators. It's not like this one. That one is a very fast reading, but general, it's not like this one. It just started last Sunday, and we look forward to finish it very fast. We also have a Tuesday classes as well. And we might have a class on, or an extra session on explaining some terms and other words in these consciousness, because they are heavy terms. Sawindo have asked of this, Brother Kwame is willing to do that. So we'll also inform you anytime, I think, when we are ready to share more of this, to simplified version of how we approach consciousness. Thank you very much for your continued support, for your time, your contribution and attendance. I think together we are learning a lot, and together we are liberating ourselves and decolonizing our mind, so that we can be the instrument of we can be the tool towards the liberation struggle that we look forward to. Let's meet again Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, or Thursday. Have a blessed evening.
All right.
Thank you, Kwaheri. Bye.
Kwaheri. Yes.